First, giving honor to God for bringing us all together this evening. I want to thank Pastor Palmer for that very gracious introduction. I want to recognize the members of the head table, all the clergy, friends and family, brothers and sisters. I also want to recognize and thank the Bishops of Excellence for orchestrating this event and for providing me with the privilege to speak with you this evening. It is always a privilege to return home. For me, there are so many memories that are connected to East Texas. Memories that have helped to both ground me and to motivate me over the years. Memories that have taught me to believe that before we can rightly envision the future, we must first rightly envision the past and the present. Before we can forge a future that is exceptional, we must first acknowledge that our past is also exceptional. I remember the old songs that the elders used to sing when I was a boy. They were the type of songs that came from deep within. Songs that seep down into your soul. Songs that made creaky wooden pews a place of comfort. Songs that inspired young boys to grow into men. One of the songs that I remember vividly is The Rough Side of the Mountain. It was a chorus that would always capture my attention. I'm coming up on the rough side of the mountain. I must hold to God his unchanging hand. I'm coming up on the rough side of the mountain, and I'm doing my best to make it in. From the song, I learned that there are mountains in life. I learned that there is a rough side to each one. And I learned that I needed to live a life that was capable of climbing mountains. This is the lesson that I learned from my elders, that I was meant to climb mountains, that we all are meant to climb mountains. For me, my past is here. My family was forged in these piney woods out here in East Texas. My great-great-grandfather, Ben Johnson, is the reason why my family is in East Texas. He died as a man still ensnared by the bondage of slavery. He was placed in a local cemetery not too far from here. There's a barbed wire fence that runs through the middle of it, still segregating it today. A reminder of the prickly barriers that once existed. A reminder of the harsh realities that he once endured. A reminder of the mountains that he once had to climb. Although we know that he was laid in that cemetery, we're unable to find his exact burial location. For slaves were not offered the privilege of permanent headstones. The rocks that once marked his grave have long been removed by the hands of time. I can still recall the day that I stood there in that quiet place, trying to feel the moment, trying to understand the complexities of my own feelings, trying to take my eyes off of that barbed wire fence. And I remember looking at my young sons as they stood next to me, and as I stood there trying to find the words to tell them what they were looking at. Yes, there are still mountains that we have to climb today. One of Ben's sons was Franklin, my great-grandfather. He was born a slave but died a free man. In the church that I would generations later come to know Christ, Franklin served as his first deacon. One of his sons, Leonard, is my grandfather. He began his life as a sharecropper, but somehow, some way, he was able to forge a living for his family. He purchased his own land, built his own house, and sent many of his children to college, including my mother, who is here with us this evening. I'm proud of the fact that my family went from slavery and unmarked graves to college graduates in just 3 short generations. And yet there are still mountains that we have to climb. I realize that my lineage of exceptionalness is not limited just to me. For all of us are the living hopes of slaves that dare to endure the horror of their lives. We are the living embodiment of their dreams. We are the living sentiment of their songs. We are God's provisions to their countless prayers. We are the fruit of their tireless labor. We are the exceptional futures that they once dared to envision. There are many that would tell us to shy away from the hopefulness of the past, to balk at their optimism, to crater beneath their heroic lies. They would speak words of caution, telling us to refuse the call and to refuse the mountains in our lives. They would tell us to look for easier paths. They would tell us that the mountain is a curse, a hindrance, an evil burden. But y'all, I found my blessing while on the mountain. I found my strength while on the mountain. I found hope on the mountain. I found my faith while traveling up the rough side of the mountain. You ought to climb your mountain this evening. Of my grandparents, my mother's mother is the one that I knew the best. If anyone ever dared to share wisdom with me, it was my grandmother, Frances Johnson. I was 8 years old and I was quickly awakening to the realities of racism in the world around me. Looking for answers, I asked her, when you were younger, how did you handle it? Her words echo in my ear to this very day. I didn't have time to worry about it. I was too busy working. She had her own mountain to climb, and so do I. From the beginning, our community has been committed to moving forward, to work hard work, to diligence, to overcoming, and to excellence. I know that in today's world, we have many remnants of our hurtful history still lingering in a very painful present. If one wanted to find justification for being overwhelmed, it would not be difficult to find reasonable excuses. Militarized police forces, unexplainably high incarceration rates, underperforming schools, an unfair economic system, and the list can go on and on and on. But no matter how numerous and how just these observations are, they would not have deterred Ben. They would not have undermined the determination of Franklin and Leonard. And they certainly would not have distracted Francis. They would have found the strength to keep moving forward. They would have lived their lives of excellence and taught their children to do the same. It is on their shoulders that we are now able to stand. It is by their words that we have come to find our own. It is by their sacrifices that we have found life. I owe them. We all owe them a debt of honor that those that courageously live before us. We owe them the gift of our own life of excellence. We owe them a life that embodies the same courage and determination that they once dared to live. We owe them words that cast a vision of the future, like the ones that they handed down to us. We may live in a fractured world. We may live in a world that overlooks injustice, a world that at times justifies hate by fear, a world that has recoiled from grace, a world that is imperfect and far from excellent. But it is within our power today to live a life of individual excellence. We can treat people better than what they deserve. We can honor our elders. We can respect our loved ones. We can cherish and sacrifice for our children. And yes, we can even love our enemies. Dear friends, keep on climbing. When I look at the youth today, I am quite optimistic. I believe that they will accomplish things that will be beyond our imaginations. By most historical accounts, slavery within the United States began almost 400 years ago in 1619. This slavery lasted 246 years until 1865. For another 100 years, our ancestors existed in a state of partial citizenship. Jim Crow and segregation were the watchwords of the day. Out of the 400 years that we have lived in this country, only the last 50 years have been in a state of full citizenship. And only the young people coming of age now have known a world absent of the long shadow of legalized racism. They have only known a world where black billionaires exist. They have known a world where it's common to see blacks run businesses, be a cheerleader at a football game, or have their own TV show. They have known a world where Mandela was more than just a jailed activist, but the leader of a nation. They have known a world where becoming president is no longer an abstract conceptual possibility, but a very current and very concrete reality. All mountains can be climbed. There will be many, perhaps some, that are seated here tonight that will argue that the game is rigged. They will admonish us for being optimistic by telling us the reasons why failures are our only certainty. They will take the position of being a victim, pleading their case as to why others may make the climb for them. Their arguments, although framed logically and immersed in present-day realities, will feel like a capitulation. It will reek of weakness. It will feel like self-imposed subjugation, a new form of self-slavery. If you are ever in a situation where you feel like giving up, if you're ever in danger of giving up on your own vision, of your own excellence, if you ever give up on the idea that you have the power to move forward, to move higher, to capitalize on the opportunities that are around you, be encouraged. Our best is yet to come. I believe that we can climb this mountain. The first summer at West Point is considered to be a grueling experience. During the last week of it, the freshman class has marched 15 miles with a rucksack, carrying a rifle in the summer heat. During the last stretch of the march, we were sent up a mountain named Bull Hill. At the base of the mountain, I paused. It was steep, almost straight up. There was no clear path, and there were thick thick woods and rocks strewn all over. I didn't want to make the climb. My feet were already blistering, and the 40-pound rucksack was digging into my right shoulder, shooting pain throughout my body. But just ahead of me, and off to the right, there stood the chaplain on a large boulder, with his hands pointing up towards the mountain, saying, "I will look to the hills, from whence cometh my help, for my help cometh from the Lord." Without a word, I began to climb. The mountainside was rough, and so whenever I made a step forward, I would slide back in the loose dirt. The way got so steep that we all began to crawl instead of marching. We would grab on to anything and everything in order to pull ourselves forward. I was ready to quit when one of the seniors came up beside me and said, "You can't quit now. You've come too far." I made it up Bull Hill that day, and I'm still climbing mountains today. Whenever you feel discouraged, whenever you feel that you're ready to give up and to give in, whenever you feel that you can't make it, remember, you can't quit now. We've come too far. Keep on climbing, and one day we'll make it to the mountaintop together. And in that one great day, we will echo the words of the scripture. "I have fought the good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith." May God bless you. May God keep you.